My name is Mike Khodl. 30 seconds on my background, 39 years in industry. I'm a recovering controls engineer. I started at Rapistan in 1988 as a controls guy, for those of you that know that name. I ended my career as the head of innovation and technology globally for Dematic, and I was a member of the Dematic leadership team and the Keon Technology Board when they bought Dematic. So, and I did everything in between. I did have a stint where I was a plant engineer at a company called Amway Corporation. I lived in Guangzhou, China for 2 years and built an explosion-proof mixing plant over there in the late 90s, which was probably the experience of my career, and also the reason I left Amway, because I didn't want to go to China anymore. So that's a quick background on me. So I retired from Dematic 2 years ago, and I started a company called OpsMind a year later, because I got a little bored. And the mission of OpsMind is only really one thing. I have a goal to teach this industry how to run automated systems. So I call it operational readiness and operational excellence. I have programs for both. Readiness means, are you ready to go at day one? Excellence is 24 months later, are you meeting your metrics? Are you keeping your system performing the way it was intended? The first question I want you to ask yourself is, did I buy an automated product, or did I buy operational value? None of us wake up in the morning and go, I'd like to buy $20 million worth of robots tomorrow because I got nothing else to do with that money. That is never the case. We always have a business problem we're attempting to solve for, or an operational challenge, whatever it is, right? Post-COVID, almost every retailer on the planet went through a huge business transformation where e-commerce volume that was 4 or 5% is now 33% or 37% or even more, right? How do you transform automation and supply chain or fulfillment centers around that thought process? I'm going to pick on a couple other ones. The one I'm going to pick on next is I run it like in a manual building. So we grew up in this industry, old guys like me, we grew up in this industry as a batch, pick, and sort industry. Everybody did it the same way. I knew ahead of time what I had to do. 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes 7 days ahead, I knew what I needed to do on Friday afternoon from a fulfillment perspective. It's no longer the case. I don't know what I need to do 15 minutes from now. So how do I run this building? And as recent as 6 months ago, I went to a building. It was a very high velocity e-com building, doing 200 and some odd thousand units a day. And the DC manager wanted to take labor and go, I'll put them at receiving for 2 hours. I'll put them at picking for 2 hours. I'll put them at packing, and then I'll put them in shipping, right? That doesn't work in an automated system, especially this one. It was pretty automated, right? It was a two-touch process from picking to shipping, right? And everything in between was fully automated. And this guy thought he'd run this building like it was a 40-year-old batch pick and sort building, right? So that mindset, though, is embedded in this industry. And even you go back 6 months later, they still want to do it that way, right? Or at least a piece of it. So as you think about automated systems, the culture shift around the mindset of the staff is important. And I've actually created this little side bucket activity in my OpsMind consulting business where I'm actually now mentoring distribution center managers and supervisors on how to plan and how to participate in the journey of an automated system to be successful. The other one I'm going to pick on in here is metric alignment. And I don't mean just variable cost per unit metric alignment. I mean all of it. So when I think of a board at a retailer, almost every single one of those supervisory boards have no clue whether their automation network is performing or not. And most of the stuff they get is smoke and mirrors, right? So I've created another side bucket where I'm working with supervisory boards at companies and board of directors at companies to recalibrate all of their metrics if they already have or in the process of building out an automated network, or even one node within a network, because it changes the game on how we look into the systems. You can read through the rest of those. These are all just, I call them points of interest. They're starting conversation points, right? When we talk about metrics and we talk about monitoring, I like to break every type of system on the planet into these 4 tiers. So when we think about the tiers, right, we all talk about equipment. That's the foundational tier. We might talk about some subsystems and modules like goods-to-person workstations and sorters and shipping areas as we get into the functional area piece. But then there's the entire solution or the entire fulfillment center node that needs a set of metrics as well. And as we progress through, there's a set of metrics in each of these tiers that are different, and they're also connected to different audiences, right? So engineers like to engineer things for engineers, not operators, right? So my old company, Dematic, was great at this, by the way. You go to a graphic system monitor or SCADA node, and up comes all the alerts, and it says, fault at RA-10001-11. And an operator goes, what the heck does that mean? Well, don't you know that's roller accumulator number, unit 1 at control cabinet 11? They don't know that stuff, right? So there's a way to set up a bunch of stuff that means something to a maintenance person, an operator, a supervisor, a general manager, or a board. And it's my opinion that all of these have to have that set of metrics aligned correctly. So these bottom 2 become an equipment-focused layer, and the upper part of this becomes an operation and software-focused layer. And well, Khodl, what do you got to do from a metric perspective on software, right? A lot, by the way. Those might have to do with inventory velocities, order pools, the way we prioritize order pools, the way we prioritize order letdown on that automated system, how it gets parsed and delivered in an effective way becomes part of the metric monitoring around the software layer. Could be a warehouse management system, WES, WCS, whatever you want to call it. But there's a bunch that, quite frankly, gets completely ignored there. So how long does it take for me to set up my e-com order profile? When does it happen? Right? Oh, does it happen when I'm trying to do maintenance every night? Or I'm trying to do shuffling in my automated forward pick grid? Do I blow it up when that happens? All those become elements of operational excellence that are ignored. If that makes sense, everybody. By the way, feel free to shout in a question or say I'm stupid or whatever. I don't understand something, right? So this slide is, how many people know what OEE is? Raise your hand. I know you do, because we talked earlier about where you're from. I know you do. All right, so OEE stands for overall equipment effectiveness. So one of my mindsets in this industry is that if I compare a fulfillment center or a distribution center, I don't care if it's grocery, food and beverage, retail, or a pure e-com building. If we thought of those buildings as an automated manufacturing plant, our mindset would shift. So if we think my product, right, if I'm making mouse cases, my product is mouse cases. This is no different than an e-com order or a grocery store order. It needs to be made on time, on budget, meet my quality expectations, and delight my customer, right, at the end of the day. No different than an automated manufacturing building. OEE is a metric that comes out of the automated manufacturing world. So at Amway, when I was a plant engineer, my DC, or my plant manager's bonus was tied to my ability to make OEE better every year or not. And if it wasn't, he wasn't happy, right? There's a bunch of stuff that goes into OEE, and it's the ability to actually measure how good am I at planning this asset called an automated system. So is it capable of running 21 hours a day? Do I run it 21 hours a day? Yes or no? It's capable of some kind of throughput. So if I think of a shipping sorter that's capable of 400 a minute, do I run it at 400 a minute? Or do I run it at 220? And then there's a quality measure, whatever it might be. It might be customer satisfaction. It might be order accuracy. It might be cutoff times met, every hour, whatever it is. You put those 3 elements into a formulation. If you Google OEE and get all the formulas, and it gives you a single numerical value on your ability to plan, use your asset effectively, and meet your quality measures. And if you hit 92%, you're world class. So I'm 92% efficient and effective with my asset that I just spent $200 million on. The average in the industry is 57, which is failure. Right? So we would have all lost our jobs at Amway if we had a plant run at 57. 74, you'd probably lose your job. So if you weren't over 88, you weren't good enough. All right? I would like to see the same mindset shift into our industry that automated manufacturing has. And then you can grow that into TEEP. And TEEP is where I actually now take human or robot productivity numbers. I apply that on top of my OEE, and I can start to measure productivity as it relates to my ability to plan well, use the machine asset, and meet my quality triggers. And then I have this mindset, we won't get into it, but OLE, which is a Mike Khodl term about overall logistics effectiveness. So how do I measure my entire node or my network with a single numerical value and know that it's running well or not on a quarterly, annual basis? So it's just a way of changing the thinking about when I apply an automated system, what do I got to measure and how do I want to measure that in a different way versus the way that we've done it for years in this industry. And then you take that one step further, all the different elements of quarterly shift. Actually, I would like to see it in 15-minute increments in our industry, right? How many people know what SPC charting is? All right, so statistical process control analysis. That's also an automated manufacturing term. But wouldn't it be awesome if I'm running that shipping sorter at 400 a minute and I've sized it for 2% recirc, and if I take a data sample every 15 minutes, so 4 times an hour, and I alert the supervisor when 3 or 4 samples is at 10%? Wouldn't it be awesome to know that I'm going to try and prevent going into gridlock instead of actually going into gridlock, and then shutting my building down and taking 2 hours to recover from that, or maybe a half a day, right? So OEE, statistical process control, all automated manufacturing mindset shifts towards the fulfillment industry. Make sense to everybody? If we all did it, I'd be so happy, all right? It'd make my day. The other part I want to talk about, when I go into a building, even when I worked at Dematic or today in my consulting business, these are the top 6 things I measure or look at. There are more, but these are my top 6. So I can give you a grade in your building pretty quickly. A day walkthrough, I'll know how well you are at managing your capacity, meaning how much can I store in here, am I efficient at it? What my throughput looks like, so volume, not productivity, those tend to get mixed. Productivity is workstation productivity, right? And by the way, I mentioned earlier, one of the number one measure issues with productivity is most of the industry monitors productivity with indirect labor attached to it. So I believe you need to measure both, right? So I was at a customer a couple weeks ago. I said, what's your engineered standard for your workstations? They're like, it's 260. I said, well, what are you achieving? And they're like, 282. I'm like, fantastic, right? Although it should be 470, but okay. And I said, what's your indirect number? 140. Do some quick math. You think it's okay to have 40+% indirect labor in picking? I would say you're fired, right? That is a bad answer. Who in their right mind thinks that's okay? But if you set a metric for 140 and you tell your board you're at 140 or 142, everybody's happy. I just buried a 40% labor bucket risk pool in my operation. By the way, automation exposes that if you do it correctly, right? And it's a good thing, because if you want to manage variable cost per unit out the door, you don't just manage your specific productivity at a workstation, you manage your indirect labor associated with it as well, right? So monitoring vCPU and all these pieces becomes crucial. And then order cycle time, order accuracy, and cost to operate are all key metrics. And I would love to see us get to 4 or 6 Sigma, right? And what do I mean by that? Today, in our old school methodology, we accept 98.5% accuracy in this industry, all over the place. So if 98.5%, so if 1.5% of the time you ordered something from Amazon and it showed up wrong at your house, would you do business with them? The answer is no. I'd find somebody else, right? When was the last time you had a order error out of Amazon? I actually had one yesterday. Not an error, but a problem. They guaranteed me a shipment yesterday morning. It got waylaid, I think, by the AWS problem, and it showed up today, a day later than I wanted it to. And by the way, it was some new socks. I was upset. I wanted some new socks for this trip. Anyway, so order accuracy becomes really crucial. Order cycle time becomes crucial too, because in our batch pick and sort mind, 4 hours is an okay order cycle time. But if my business is launching a new e-com node or part of a node in a distribution center that does e-com, and I want same day delivery, I'm in New York or LA, I need to ship that thing out the door in less than 90 minutes from the time I receive the order so I can get it on the road, because I have a 2 to 3 hour transportation window for same day delivery. All right, so understanding order cycle time and the impact, and I don't care if it's meat and grocery truck cutoff, meat and cold chain compliance cutoff, if I've got frozen goods in my operation, whatever it is, understanding order cycle time is really critical. And I would actually break that down a little deeper, and you need to know every single dwell time for every process step in your building with an automated system. And what do I mean by that? I want to know how long it takes to get a SKU from receiving to decant, decant to storage, storage to picking, picking to packing, packing to ship container, and so on, right? Every one of those process steps, I want an engineered standard assigned to, not a holistic one. And then I want an SPC chart for every one of those that says, by the way, dwell between picking and packing is trending up. Why? Do I have an equipment problem? Do I have a people problem? Are they all lazy today? Is it Monday after Super Bowl? What is it that's causing this dwell in my cycle time? Okay, this is a fun one. It's not just about picking. So we all focus our minds on the pick system, right? But I can blow up those orange totes out there on that robot picking system really fast if I don't do my inbound receiving and decanting process correctly. So if I size that robot picking system or that robot grid for 50% SKU per totes and 70% less than 2 SKUs per tote, as soon as I get out of whack and don't do consolidation correctly and don't do inbound correctly, I will never hit my productivity numbers at picking. But it has nothing to do with picking, right? Nothing to do with picking. It is entirely an inbound process problem that blows up picking. Same with balancing, picking, packing, right? If I have an automated system, I can't put 3 times more labor as a batch pick sort mindset into packing and think I'm going to go faster today. Because actually what I do is I suck the machine dry and I lose all my efficiency. And then the labor stands around with their thumb up their butt waiting for orders to show up. I had to prove this to a DC manager just about, I don't know, back in July. He's like, Khodl, you're wrong. I need 30 extra packers. And I'm like, you do not. I said, I want you to eliminate 45 packers just for one day, please. I don't care if you pay them to sit in the cafeteria, but I want 45 packers out of this building for just one day. He's like, okay. And he did it. And his productivity numbers went through the roof. He's like, oh my God. right? Unbelievable. But I had to prove it to him. Now he gets it, right? And his variable cost per unit from last year to this year went down 82%. 82%. And his indirect is only 5% more than his actual productivity number. It's fantastic, right? They were all happy, right? But it's not just about picking. I'm not going to go through those, but I do want to cover this before we go into a lot of questions and answers. The other thing about automated systems, I'm sure you've all been through the first one of these, an acceptance test plan. If you've worked with any supplier on the planet, you've helped put in an ATP. ATP is about the equipment. Does my sorter run 400 a minute? Does my robot do 32 cycles a minute? Whatever it is, right? But then there's UAT, and some people do UAT pretty well, right? How do I use my software interfaces and my UIs? How do my workstations perform as a combined entity for productivity and throughput? And then this one is missing 99% of the time. ORT is what I call it, which is operational readiness and training. Do my staff members, do my managers and supervisors, and if I'm a large enough building, do my command center people know how to run this thing? And do they know that when I see X, Y, and Z, that means that's broken? Do I have cameras in the building on the equipment? Which most of the case is not true, because security or somebody back at corporate says you can't have cameras in the building, right? But if you point them correctly and secure them correctly, you can do it, right? And by the way, with automated systems today, no different than your ring at your front door. When an alarm goes off, you can point a camera at a piece of technology with a 360 camera. And so the command center can go, oh, merge fault. Oh, hey, operator XYZ, please go to line 3 and clear that jam, right? That's operational readiness and training. And then the last part of that is having dashboards with data for the operators. It's amazing how many buildings I go into and I ask them, what's your recirc on your shipping sorter? I don't know. Well, do you know why stuff goes to recirc? I don't know. Really? Right? How many lane fulls do you have every day? I don't know. And they have nothing, no data that says, oh, here's my lane fulls for the last 30 days. Or here's my recirc volume. Or here's my no reads on my scanner that tells me I need to, dust off the lenses or whatever it is, right? So the dashboards from an operational readiness and training perspective become one of my first points of interest when I go into a building to do an evaluation, because you're driving your car blind. You don't have a RPM gauge, you don't have a speedometer. You might have an idiot light or two, but it's way too late when they go off. Your building's down. Your building might be down for a shift or a day, right, because of it. So going through the process of true ATP, UAT, and ORT, ORT is the hardest part, takes time. And you got to plan that into your launch to meet a readiness window. Make sense to everybody? To answer your question, I'm going to answer it two-partedly. One is you first have to understand your need for what your order cycle time should be. So I worked with a customer here recently where they have two businesses within a business that they do e-com for. One's their lower brand, one's their higher brand, right? And their transportation team and their supply chain inventory team were fudging the system for one versus the other so that they could get their second day delivery demand met. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Well, that's what we got to do to make it work. I'm like, no, you don't. We got to get your order cycle time working correctly in your building. And then maybe your order letdown will actually look better, right? Be more effective if you actually managed it correctly in your order letdown. So they were fudging the system because they didn't understand their order cycle time as it relates to their customer promise. So one, you got to make sure that's aligned. We aligned it. Oh my God. By the way, they have 92% same day delivery now for both brands. They were very happy about that, right? But we took their order cycle time down from 3.5 hours to 47 minutes inside of 5 months. right? So it empowered them to change the way they operate. So my first question to that person, if they were an e-commerce as an example, I would immediately first ask about their order splits between singles and multi-line orders and the variables inside of their day, month, year, right? And I may actually increase one or the other depending on the order delivery. So singles typically go faster. So I'd prioritize singles letdown over multis letdowns for some period of time during the day. And to your point, I might destroy cycle time for multis, but I meet customer promise, always, right? So understanding order cycle time in that whole process is really critical, especially if I'm an e-com building. Yep. But even if I'm a grocery building, right? So the most important thing to a grocer is meeting truck cutoff times. Right? So if I'm delivering in New York, if I don't get those trucks on the road by 3:30 in the morning, guess what? They're stuck on the highway for an extra 2 hours for that delivery. And they're mad. Somebody's mad about that, right? So anyway, so order cycle time is a huge one for me. This is an example of a particular site that I worked on, and the whole point of this slide is two things. This number right here is a variable, 1.98 items per order. 2.2 items per order. Doesn't sound like much, does it? However, if you look at my WIP balance between picking and packing and my outbound shipping rate for 1.98, and by the way, I need 84 packers as an example. Here, 2.2, my WIP volume looks pretty much the same, but look what happens to my order volume, drops by 10%, 12%, and I need a lot less labor in packing. Right? So understanding the relationship between picking and packing balance, order cycle time, and items per order, specifically in the e-com building, become absolutely crucial so that I can plan my FTEs properly. And if I get that balance out of whack, right here or right here, blows the building up. Blows it up. It won't run. Literally won't run. Their productivity goes sub to 20% of their capacity. So anyway, any other questions, comments? If you take one thing away from here, it's ORT. Please do ORT. And then put OEE in practice. The Pepsi guys already know how to do it.